All right, I'm going to jump right in. There's a lot of content tonight. Welcome those of you watching the recording or watching it live. My name is John Dominguez. I'm a clinical psychologist with Meridian Psychiatric Partners. Tonight is the third night in a parent series, back to school series, and tonight's going to talk about dealing with our child's anxieties, particularly school-based anxiety, but it's going to start more general and get to more school-based stuff. So um, I'm gonna I'm gonna just dive right in. Hopefully, I can get through all the content and maybe have time for a little Q&A at the end. So, um, yes, today is about supporting children with school-based anxiety. And the first thing that I want to do in tonight's training series is I want to help you guys redefine what anxiety is for your children and really for yourselves too. Um, I'm hoping that you'll look at your own anxiety in a different, healthier, less self-defeating way too. I know that I teach and preach this stuff. I know I'm prone to anxiety, and I know that my anxiety management skills are very strong because I practice what I preach. So hopefully there's some things that you can pick up for yourself tonight too. Um, but yeah, I think that's the first thing I want to do tonight. If I do my job well tonight in this hour, you guys will have a little bit of a different kind of relationship with your anxiety, and will be teaching your kids how to do the same. Um, because what most children know about anxiety to this point is what they've learned from us. And if you're prone to anxiety like me, it's really easy for us to walk around and exude that anxiety all over the house, um, whether we want to or not, whether we realize it or not. And children are little sponges when it comes to the emotions that's seeping from our pores. And whether we know it or not or want them to, they are watching very closely to see how we manage and deal with anxiety and how we interpret our different feelings. So um, I don't want to put the fear of God in you guys, but I want you to embrace the responsibility of teaching your children safe ways to manage and express um, their difficult emotions like anxiety. So my rule number one is to try to minimize and eliminate the amount of time that you are carrying around your anxiety in the house for your child to see, taste, feel, hear, um, and touch. Okay, that's a hard thing to do sometimes, but I'm telling you, like I said, kids will pick up. They'll absorb our anxiety, and without us showing them how and modeling the right way to handle it, they're gonna struggle to manage it, especially the younger that the kids are. Um, so I'm gonna start out with little kind of a funny true story that happened. It was about me helping redefine anxiety for my daughter in a particular situation, and it's an extreme example, but it is a real example, but it does make a point. um and I want to start with it because it's light, but again, I think you'll know why I put this in the story. And it's not just to make myself sound like a good dad, because this was probably one of my best daddy moments that I've ever had. And I'd like to think that I've had a couple, but this was like a good one. And it wasn't even like I was in like good child psychologist mode or good daddy mode. I lucked into a good daddy moment. So I'm pretty happy about this, even though my daughter barely remembers it. Um, but when my daughter was about probably three give or take, um, and this didn't happen very often at all, but she woke up in the middle of the night and she was crying. And I'm a, I'm a little bit lighter sleeper than my wife, so I woke up and rushed to her room. And like a lot of parents have dealt with multiple times with different kids of the same child, my daughter said, "There's a monster in my closet." you know, and it's the middle of the night and I'm not quite all there. But like I said, luckily um, I just had an instinct and sort of went with it. Because like again, my thought was, Okay. Obviously, there's not a monster in her closet. I need to validate her anxiety and help her go back to sleep so I can go back to sleep. And that's not a bad play at all. That's kind of what I would almost teach. Just validate the anxiety, hang out with her, assure her that she's safe and that's all well and good. But I did something different. And I said, "Oh my gosh, are you serious? Where? I want to meet your monster friend." And she's like, in the closet." And I'm like, "Can I go say hello?" She's like, "Yeah." And so I go to the closet. I'm like, "What? Where is it? Are you sure?" Issa is my daughter's name. Issa, are you sure that you have a monster in here? I would love, he probably just wants to do a sleepover. He probably just wants to be friends. I want to join your sleepover. Can I join your sleepover? I guess. Where's your monster friend? I don't okay. Bummer. Well, he's definitely not in the closet. Should I check under the bed? Okay. All right, maybe he's under there. No, dang it. He's not there. Okay, Issa. God, that would have been a really fun sleepover the three of us could have had. Well, you promised me something if he comes back, or he's a he or a she. I don't know. Okay. Um, well, when they come back, will you call me again and then the three of us can hang out? She goes, okay. And she just turned over and went back to sleep, and I never heard. Not only did I not hear from her again the rest of the night, she never ever cried and was anxious about a monster in her closet again. So, um, yeah, I was feeling pretty good that night as a dad because she not only I didn't just validate her anxiety and help her work through the anxiety, I completely eliminated it. I turned it on its head because I turned an anxious situation into something that completely was not. And luckily I got away with it because that doesn't always work. But like but that's if there are ways to redefine anxiety, I'm going to talk about this too. We're going to get into this, but this is an extreme example of redefining what children kind of know and have come to expect about anxiety, probably because we taught them. Okay, so the first major point that I want to make after my little story, after my little daddy story, um, is I'm going to try to convince you guys in 50 minutes that anxiety is a good thing. And I'm going to start with giving you the results of research that has been sort of replicated for the last 4 decades on the relationship between human performance and anxiety. This has been studied quite a long time, and 40 years ago, and certainly since then, it was a very popular topic. Everybody knew that anxiety impacted how we performed, and people just didn't know exactly how good or bad it was. And so that's what these researchers, Yerkes and Dodson, that's what they set out to do. Okay. And it's if I were in a classroom, I would pop quiz everyone and I would say, "Do you guys think that we perform best as humans when our anxiety is high or when anxiety is low?" And I get a lot of, "I don't depends," or "probably low, no, no, high." And it's not fair of me to ask that question and not give the actual right answer in the alternatives. But what Yerkes Dodson found, and I'll illustrate their results right now, um, they found out that our human performance is maximized when our anxiety arousal is right in the middle. So a moderate level of anxiety is what equates to our best performance. Now, this could be performance in a piano recital, in a game, on a test, giving a presentation, in a hard conversation, performing surgery. Like it could be anything. Okay, so this to me is fascinating. This is the first talking point I want you guys to cement in your skulls, because if our performance is maximized when our anxiety is moderate, then we need we need a healthy dose of anxiety to carry around if we're going to be high performers, right? So yes, and this is I probably don't need to go through a bunch of examples about this, about why moderate levels of anxiety are high. In our why moderate levels of anxiety are associated with high performance, but um, I'll just give you one, and I'll give you mine. I'll give you what I'm doing right now. I'm talking to a computer, giving an hour long, you know, uh, presentation. Okay. And um, I hope, because I practice what I preach, that my performance in this presentation will be relatively high, because I've tried to keep my anxiety about it in the moderate range, in the mid range. Okay. Because if I had a very low level of anxiety about presenting this parent series, I would be like, well, they're just parents. They probably won't even be listening to what I'm saying. I've I kinda know this stuff. I can just sort of wing it, and if I mess up, or if they don't understand what I'm talking about, it's not like I'll probably never see these people again, so it's, like, not gonna be that big of a deal whether, like, it's good or not. It's like, if that's that's a that's my good low anxiety impression. I hope that was good. But you could agree that if that was my level of anxiety going into performing, um, tonight on this presentation, I think you would see somebody who was like very not prepared and very uninterested in what he was doing and not focused, and it would not be a good presentation. On the other end of the spectrum, if I had very high amount of anxiety about it. I'm like, oh my God, I got to get this right. It has to be perfect. I don't want the parents to think that I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm representing Meridian. And Meridian, I don't want them to be disappointed if I screw up. I have to, and I can't forget all the talking points. And I only have an hour. Oh my God, I got to get all these in an hour. Oh my God, I gotta study all night. I gotta do this all night. That high level of anxiety, perfectionistic tendency, maybe, that too, for a very different reason, will be associated with a poor performance on the presentation by by the instructor, by me in this example. But what an example in this case of a moderate dose of anxiety is: okay, I got the parent series coming up. There's a lot of good information that I want to get out to parents. I want it to be really concise. I want it to be helpful as much as I can be for the parents. And I don't want to waste a lot of time. I don't want to waste their time during these presentations telling them something that isn't meaningful, that they're not going to find useful. So, okay, what I need to do then is I need to make sure I prepare these presentations really thoughtfully, these slideshows very thoughtfully. I want to make sure I get all the talking points in. I want to make sure that I spend enough time going over the slides to make sure I got them all in there. And then when I show up on Tuesday night, I just want to be clear headed and focused and do the best I can. And that's it. Okay, so that's an example of me. That was a pretty moderate dose of anxiety. I was thinking about a lot of things. I was thinking about you guys getting meaningful information. I was thinking about getting in all the talking points in a small amount of time. But that moderate dose of anxiety focused me on good preparation of the slide presentation. So if I'm practicing when I'm preaching, um, I should be doing kind of okay on this presentation because I kept my anxiety about it at a moderate level. All right. I can give a million examples, but I think you guys can kind of get that's what, you need a little bit of motivation to focus your planning, your practice, your training, your studying. And if you focus on that, and then focus on your actual performance, clear your head for the actual performance, after your preparedness plan has been followed through on, then that's your best bet. That's going to maximize your performance. Okay. So that's talking point number one. Okay. I'm hoping you're already liking your anxiety a little bit more than you did before this started, because you need a little bit of anxiety, or a moderate dose of anxiety, to be a high achiever that we all want to be. Okay. Second talking point, very, very, very related. About 10 or 12 years ago, I was I was watching a YouTube video, just trying to master my craft here a little bit. So I came across this TED talk on anxiety management, and because I work with kids with anxiety, and adults and with anxiety a lot, I was just watching a TED talk, and this woman, she was a doctor, and her specialty was coronary issues. So she was describing her typical client population. It was a lot of elderly people that have had coronary conditions in the past, or people post stroke, or heart attack, and she went on to talk about her work, and she was about 40 at the time. So she's, she's been practicing as a certified doctor for 10 to 12 years or whatever. And she goes on to say, I've been my whole life, my whole professional life, I've been telling my clients that anxiety and stress are really bad because they negatively impact your heart stuff. And you gotta, you really gotta watch out with that, and she was, going over some studies or whatever. And then she kind of stops and just kind of, she gets to the point. She's just like, I've been doing this wrong the entire time. Instead of telling these guys that they should fear their stress and anxiety, I should have been telling them that they should embrace it, because stress and anxiety happen. I can't control their level of anxiety, neither can they. And even if I could, I don't know that I would want to, because again, anxiety is not a bad thing. She goes, anxiety, I finally figured this out. Anxiety is just our body's way of telling us something important is about to happen, and you want to be prepared for it. Like, and she's like, if a friend told me that, I'd be like, oh my God, thank you. Thanks for the heads up, and thanks for the motivational speech. I'm gonna go get prepared right now. Okay, so what this woman had talked about in her definition of of anxiety, right, which again I love, and I hope it's another talking point that you guys can take away as you again reestablish a different relationship with your own anxiety and help your kids do the same. If anxiety is just your body's way of saying, "Hey, let's something important's about to happen, and let's talk about how to prepare for it," then again, that goes along with our moderate dose of anxiety, right? That moderate dose of anxiety says, yeah, prep's going to be important. What is our Let's make a good preparation plan. Let's follow it. Let's implement it. And let's do our best on game day. Um, so, this is the woman's bottom line in the TED Talk. She's like, now I don't tell my clients to fear stress and anxiety. I tell them you should be happy. You should be happy that it's there. It tells us how we need to prepare, and then we can focus on the preparation. Okay, so I'm starting to lay the foundation of hopefully you liking your anxiety a little bit better, and that you need a good dose in order to perform the way that you want. Okay, what so many of my very smart clients say to me, because they know all this stuff, because I told them, because it's that foundational to me in terms of anxiety management. They say, okay, all right, Dominguez, we get it. Okay, you convinced me that a moderate amount of anxiety is a good thing. Okay, you got me. You sold me on that, and you sold me on, you know, anxiety. This is anxiety's, way of letting you know something important's about to happen. You should probably get prepared for it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. But what about this? But what if the two? What if you can't get rid of of the excess anxiety? Okay, because, and I should have sort of backed up here. The top, if you see the top of this slide, I should have opened this slide with this. It says embrace and dispose. I'm going to be talking about an embrace and dispose model of anxiety. I have one for mood management too, by the way, but we probably won't get to that tonight. An embrace and dispose model of anxiety where you're going to embrace the moderate amount that you need to excel in your performance, and you're going to dispose of the rest. But as I'm saying, my smart clients have said, okay, you convinced me that I need to embrace the good anxiety and dispose of the rest, but how the heck do you do that? Okay, and we're gonna get into that a little bit. It is easier said than done. I know that, but we are gonna get into that. So, but the way I want you to think about this embrace and dispose model, it's kind of like when we have a meal. Like hopefully you guys like to eat meals. Hopefully, um, there's fun things you like to cook and eat and whatever. Well, when we eat, it's like our body has a way of knowing how to use the nutrients that we put in, that we that we eat through the food that we eat. And it also knows, it also has a plan to dispose of the excess waste. It's kind of gross, we kind of flush it down the toilet, but but that's what, that's what the body does. It uses what nourishes it, and it literally craps out the rest. Sorry, it disposes of the rest. And I want you to think of anxiety the same way. You're going to take the moderate dose that you need, and you're going to dispose of the rest. You're going to flush the rest, trim the fat, whatever metaphor works for you. And because our goal is to keep our anxiety at a moderate level. Okay. And again, I'm going to say more about how to do that because it's easier said than done. So again, keeping our anxiety moderate. Um, the first thing is lowering our arousal when it's too high. I give this mini speech in every talk that I give regarding any human behavior. Anything that I as a child psychologist, child family psychologist talk about, I have a mini lecture about this, and it's about our own emotional arousal. Okay. So the first thing that we need to do to modulate our anxiety when it's too high, number one, is we need to recognize that we're in a highly anxious spot. Now, some of us are good at recognizing, oh my God, I'm really anxious right now. Um, Most people who are around us are really good at seeing that we're really anxious right now, and they might even tell us, "Dude, chill out," or something to that effect. Um, but that is step number one, is you got to recognize when your anxiety arousals is at a too high point, and you got to bring it down to a more manageable level. Because again, the mini part of the lecture is, if our anxiety is heightened, our emotional center is in the mid part of our brain. If the mid part of our brain is too activated, our frontal cortex, which is the smart part of our brain, is offline. So in terms of how we manage our anxiety in a smart way, I want to have access to the frontal cortex when I decide how I'm going to manage anxiety in a smart way. So in order to access that, I need to lower my emotional arousal, my anxiety arousal, and I do that through breathing and self-talk. People use mindfulness. People use there's a lot of different structured technique breathing techniques, but this is just getting ourselves from this heightened emotional arousal to just a more manageable spot. So again, so that our mid part of our brain isn't so highly activated that we can't access the front part. And again, you can Google a bunch of different regulation strategies. That this is like a different presentation altogether. But what I teach and preach, I teach what's called the triple structured breathing technique, and that's breathing in deeply through the nose for 3 seconds, holding it for 3 seconds, and then exhaling through the mouth for 3 seconds, and doing that 3 times. That's why I call it the triple triple. It only takes 27 seconds. It's a game changer for me and a lot of my clients who use it with intent, um, at just getting yourself to a more manageable level of emotional arousal, so you can be thoughtful about how you're going to manage your anxiety. Okay. So, like I said, self talk, keeping conceptual stuff in mind. People use mindfulness, relaxation, explore for yourself what works. Or, gosh, you can Google self regulation strategies, and you'll find you'll find dozens, and see what works for you. Um, there's also, I have to do a lot of this, not with myself and not with some of my clients, but with some of my adolescent um, uh, school refusers, or kids that aren't really into school. Sometimes I have to raise a little bit of anxiety about the importance of going to school and getting passing grades. Um, So, um, that's the other end of anxiety modulation, is if our motivation is if our anxiety is so low, that we're not even, motivated or even thinking about preparing ourselves to do well on whatever, whatever our performance task is, then, obviously the goal would be to raise that anxiety. Okay. For most of the people that I'm talking about and talking to, that's not a problem for them, but theoretically it can be. And like I said, I do have a lot of teens who are like, I don't care about school, I don't care about my grades, and if that's their level of anxiety about about failing in school and not showing up in school, then their school performance is obviously not going to be very high. So, okay. So the other thing that is a huge talking point that I tell my clients who are like, okay, Dominguez, okay, I like the moderate amount of anxiety. I get it. But how do I know when I've taken too much? That's a good question. Not only do they want to know how to dispose of the excess, they want to know, how do I know that I'm in this excess zone? Again, great question. And I usually answer before they ask me, because there is an answer to this. The second the second occupy your headspace with something that you can't control versus something that you can, that's when you've gone from the moderate zone to the excess, too much, disposable waste anxiety zone. Okay. So in the example of my presentation, okay, if I'm filling my headspace with my preparation strategy, I want to look over the slides again. I want to make sure that the talking points are in good order. I want to make sure it's concise and there's not a lot of fluff, and that I want to make sure the talking points are outlined. And if I'm focused on things that I can control, like preparing the slides, I'm good. I'm in that healthy moderate dose of anxiety zone right there. But as soon as I start saying, what if no one shows up for the presentation? What if everybody hates it? What if I get a bunch of bad reviews? What if I have a coughing attack during the thing? What if what if people start just like interrupting me in the crowd and asking all these questions, and I get off track? What if this? What if that? As soon as I start thinking about things I can't control, that's when you know you're in the excess disposable zone. Okay. So that's the control piece versus the non control piece. Here's the problem for us good, anxious people. I am what I would say, a good, tried and true anxious person. Okay. So, but because again, because I practice what I preach, my anxiety management skills are very strong. So anxiety doesn't slow me down at all. Okay. But I want to say something else about anxiety, and I'm going to introduce another working definition of anxiety. I gave you one already, which was that's your body's way of telling you something important's about to happen, and you should get prepared for it. I like that. I like that operational definition of anxiety. I'm going to give you another one, which doesn't contradict. It actually supports it. But I was having a conversation with a teacher friend of mine. This is probably like 12 so years ago, 15, I don't know. And we were just chilling. We were just in the lunch, sitting, having lunch with the kids and the students. And we were just talking, and I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but we were talking about our own anxiety and laughing about, our own anxiety. And she defined anxiety in this way, like in passing. And at first I'm like, you're a teacher, I'm the psychologist. Let me do the anxiety defining, please. But I heard her definition, and at first I thought it was totally oversimplistic. And I thought for 2 more seconds about it, I'm like, oh my God, she nailed it. And she goes, she's just in passing, she goes, anxiety, it's just that state at which you really want to have control over something, but you don't. And again, I was thinking, that's not anxiety. That's too simple. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, you nailed it. That's exactly what anxiety is, I believe. We want anxious people always want to have control over outcomes. I want this presentation to go really well. I want everyone to like me. I want to have a safe train ride home. Like there's a million things. And when we're faced with the reality that we actually don't have control over the things we want to, what happens after that is a little embarrassing, because most good anxious people like myself, when we want to have control over something and are realizing that we can't, we make the mistake and fall into the trap of trying to get more controlling. Oh my God, does that sound so silly? I mean, we totally do it. And as parents, you're all parents, right? You're all parents. Or if you're on this, if you're watching this, because it's a parent series, if you do this with your kids, please don't. Please stop yesterday. Okay? Because if you want to control your children, brush your teeth, clean your room, or whatever, and it feels like you're not really controlling that situation, please don't fall into the trap of getting even more controlling. You have 3 seconds to start cleaning your room, or else. Like, Please don't do that. But that's a trap. That's a trap that we get into. Okay. And and just, there's another way, but I'm gonna explain this. Okay. So if you believe, which I do, and if you just can accept that it could be at least a little bit true that anxious people, um uh that this is a good working definition of anxiety, wanting to have control over something that you can't. And then when you're in that moment where you don't have control over something that you really want to, that's a real key moment, because I just told you that most people then get more and more controlling. And not only is that really annoying to the people that we're dealing with, it's just really ineffective. It doesn't work at giving you more control. It only works at getting you more frustrated. So for all those reasons, I'm saying again, throw like end that yesterday. If that's what you do when you want to control, when you thought you could control something, then you couldn't, and then don't get more controlling, because it never works. Okay, I'm going to give you a road trip example, which is going to be a really good example of what dialectical behavioral therapists, I'm certified in that now too, um, like to call radical acceptance. You may have heard of it. Um, one of the things that I like to do with my family is go on vacations. So we're big roller coaster people, um, and there's a really awesome amusement park in Ohio called Cedar Point. Some of you may know of it. I've been taking my family there once a year for like quite literally like 15, 16 years. And it was the night before the trip a few summer, it was probably 3 or 4 summers ago. And I usually plan these trips. I'm not like a drill sergeant about it, but this is something my family lets me do, because I'm good at planning vacations and maximizing time at the park and this and all that stuff. So they let me do it. So the night before we were leaving, um, Daddy, what time do we need to be on the road? Tell what time we leave. What time do we have to leave? And I'm like, thanks for asking. I was going to tell you 10 a.m. We need to be on the road by 10 a.m. because it's a 5 hour drive. I've driven this a million times. It's a 5 hour drive, and we lose an hour going east in the time change, and we can't get into the hotel until 4. Okay. So we want to get to the hotel right at 4 so we can check in right away and then have the most of our evening: beach time, pool time, dinner, and then we'll hit the rides the following days. All right, 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. Cool, Dad. We got this. All right. And so the next morning, great, we get off. We're on the road by 10. My plan is working. I'm in control. We're going to get to the hotel by 4 o'clock. Nothing is going to strip me of this control that I so carefully crafted for myself. But sure enough, traffic getting out of the city was way worse than I had predicted because of construction. And heading east, going through Indiana on Highway 90, Interstate 90, was all kinds of construction traffic. So I'm starting to feel like I'm losing control of my 4 p.m. hotel arrival, because I was. And, luckily I didn't make everybody crazy in the car, but I was starting to head in that direction. Okay. I'm looking at my watch. I'm sighing. I'm yelling through the windshield things like, why did they close off a lane of the highway for construction? There isn't even anybody working there. Has anyone even seen a worker? They're not even doing work. Why did they close the lane off? Um, I don't know why I thought that yelling those things through the windshield was gonna like do anything other than make me look crazy to my family, but I did it anyway, thinking that okay, that was the right thing to do. And my son, who was about 13 at the time, was a total savior, and he totally taught me about radical acceptance. And because I was starting to get, I mean, they could start to feel me. I told you at the beginning of this, like, we don't want to exude anxiety around our kids and family. Well, I was doing it in the car. I was starting to do it. Luckily, I didn't get too crazy, but I think my dad was just, he didn't want me to be frustrated, and he's like, Dad, it sucks that there's traffic, but we can't really do anything about the traffic. And that's such an obvious thing to say, but I don't know why I couldn't come up with that on my own. I don't know why I needed my son to say that from the back seat. But when he did, I'm like, "Oh my god, he's so right." And then he told me the best part about radical acceptance. in that he gave me something that I actually could control. And he said, yeah, if we get to the hotel at like 5 or 5:30 instead of 4, we're still gonna have a ton of time to do something, to have fun tonight." And that's radical acceptance. Well, I mean, me doing what my son said, that was radical acceptance because I was could I thought I had control of my 4 o'clock hotel arrival. I put so much planning into it. I know how long it takes. I know all this stuff, but there were some unforeseeable things, and I lost control. And for a while, I started doing what I warned people against. You want control over something, you don't have it. Well, fight harder to get it. No, that just makes you look like an idiot, screaming through the windshield, wondering where the construction workers are. It's called radical acceptance. When you don't have control over something, especially that you really, really want to have control over, please don't fight reality. It's not gonna gain you that control. If you don't accept the reality that you don't have control, it's just gonna drive you crazy. And you're probably going to do a bunch of over controlling things that are going to be completely ineffective and completely just make you really 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 frustrated and make you look silly in the meantime. If you don't have a control over something, you just have to acknowledge that you don't. That's the radical acceptance part. And the best part of the radical acceptance is control what you can. I mean, my son didn't use these words, but he essentially said, why don't you focus, Dad, on creating another itinerary for tonight that starts at 5 or 5:30? We'll fill it up with a ton of fun stuff, and we'll have a blast. Okay. And now my anxious brain has something that it can actually control and focus on, which is how do we want to spend our night if we when after we arrive at the hotel, probably like 5 to 5:30, because it looked like we were going to lose about an hour. And so, and once I did that, once I went through that radical acceptance process, I don't know if that would have ever happened without my son, but then I was fine. I was 100% fine. No frustration anymore, no anxiety. I even got creative about what to do with the slightly truncated amount of time we were going to have, and it was a blast. So just stopping that futile fight of controlling what you can't, and focusing on controlling what you can. That's the whole idea of this. Okay, so those are the main talking points that I never want you to forget. The first is the Yerkes Dodson law that graphically illustrates our performance is maximized when our anxiety is moderate. Okay, you got that one. You also got that first definition of a redefinition of anxiety. That's our body's way of telling us something important's about to happen. Let's get prepared for it together. Okay. And then this third piece, this other working definition of anxiety. Anxiety is just that state in which you want to have control over something, but you can't. Okay. And then when you're in that situation, don't fight it, radically accept it. Accept that you don't fight that reality, you'll lose every time. Accept that reality and focus on what you can control. Make a new plan that you can control. Focus on that. Okay. I'm not a psychiatrist. There are several here at Meridian, and are also easy to find. But I didn't want to do a presentation about this without acknowledging that there are medications that are used to treat anxiety in children and adolescents, and most of them are in the antidepressant class. They tend to work and be safe for kids with anxiety. For younger children, SSRIs are widely used for anxiety. But here's a list of 6 that are commonly used for like adolescent anxiety. So you can check in if you have a psychiatrist for your child, or just the primary care physician, pediatrician, if you're interested in this. But I won't say anything more about the psychiatry of it because again, I'm not a psychiatrist. All right, but I did want you to have this as a little bit of a resource, just to put that out there. Um, okay, how are we doing on time? Okay. Um, all right. So as we talk about school-related anxiety, I, I I I needed to lay the foundation, the framework for this conversation with the talking points that we went over. So thank you for tolerating me doing that. But there's a lot of things that can be that can be hard about starting a new school year. You know, a lot of, well, first of all, a lot of kids struggle with the transition from summer to school, you know, just like kids struggle, so transitioning from a preferred activity to a non-preferred activity. I think we all kind of do that. Um, but for a lot of kids, the routine in the summer, I mean, I know kids need structure, but for a lot of kids, at least their perception of summer is that it was chill, it was relaxed. They liked it. They liked the vibe. There was low pressure. And then shifting into this need to be at school by 8, dressed and ready to go by 7:15. Like that's a whole other, amount of pressure is just, the structure of the school day. Okay. That transition can be stressful and anxiety provoking for kids. And I even started talking about the academic or the social expectations of school. So for a lot of kids who don't feel confident academically, that part of school, which is pretty much all day, is a huge stressor. A lot of kids also struggle with the social expectations. The social demands of the school setting are quite unique. Okay, everybody's there. All the kids your age are there, and a lot of kids look like they have these very reliable and awesome friend groups, and they're all really happy, and they all take care of each other, and they're all this stuff. And if you don't feel like you have that as a child, socially, it can be very stressful and anxiety provoking to be in a large social environment where you don't feel competent and confident in your skills, or that you don't have you know a reliable group that you can hang with. So again, there's those are three huge reasons, and they can all combine to create a real stressful situation for kids in school. So we're back to the embrace and dispose model. I worked with, I had a freshman, a new Trier freshman, um, start this year, and they were very bright, but they were very nervous about the social piece. You know, um, I'm going in there, and I feel like everyone's going to have their established friend groups, and I'm not. And how do I how what am I going to how am I going to handle that? And again, I practice what I preach. I preach this stuff, and the embrace and dispose model is yeah, it is a starting a new school is an anxiety. It's a nice anxiety, right? It's exciting, you know. It's a big deal. It's a big deal to start at a new school, a new high school. Okay, this is the embrace part. Yeah, this is an important thing that's about to happen. You're gonna start a new big high school, and then just making sure that with that moderate dose, we didn't overload it and get into the excess, because that's where the student kind of wanted to go in their head. They were like I said, they were like, but everyone else is going to have their friend groups, and they're going to have people to sit with, and they're going to have friends in their classes, and I'm not going to have all that, and how am I going to do all this, and da, 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 da. And again, my bells start going off because, like I said, these are all things that student couldn't control. They're filling their headspace with it, but this is the stuff that they're not going to be able to control. Questions they can't answer, you know, catastrophizing events that we don't even know how it's going to happen, and you definitely can't control. So again, I went through the process. They knew the framework, and you know, we cut out the excess stuff, and we just focused on the embraceable part. Okay, which again was, yeah, it is a big deal to start at a new school, and let's make the most of this opportunity. Let's How can we prepare to make the most of this opportunity? And what that came down to, in order to avoid the excess stuff that the student couldn't control, is, I mean, it really came down to, you're just going to be the kind of friend that you want to have, and you're going to do that every day, and just be patient. And if you show the kind of kindness and support and sense of humor, and that you would appreciate in a friend, and you do that with consistency, and without expectation, just do it. Just do it because it's the right thing to do, and be patient. The right kids will come along, and you will connect with them. Even without a lot of support from teachers who are, structuring opportunities for kids to meet kids, and that's going to happen. But even that's not in our control. That will probably happen. That'll be a bonus. But the stuff that you can control is just being the kind of friend you want to have every day, and be patient. And the other stuff, don't worry about it. Just let everything, just focus on that plan, and let everything else fall into a place. So that's one example. A lot of kids get stressed about. I work with a lot of kids who get stressed about tests. You know, my own children. I'm my own children. I have to say this. I'm not being that bragger dad just to be that bragger dad, but I want to have some credibility with you guys here. My kids are thriving. My kids have thrived, and so when they would say, "Oh my God, I have a chem test this week," and they were starting to ramp up, I'd say, "Awesome, that's exciting. Um, what's the what's the practice plan? What's the study plan?" I would get right into the plan. Okay, yeah, I'm glad you're anxious. I'm glad you know that this is an important test, and it's a great opportunity to solidify that good grade. Do you need help coming up with a study plan and implementing the study plan? I mean, I've been doing this since day one, okay? And not reinforcing my child's, questions of like, what if the teacher puts this on the test, and what if I fail, and what if I say something wrong on the test, and what if I write, what if they ask a bunch of essay questions? I don't like like I don't even, my kids know that's, you know, I'm like, you can stress about that stuff if you want, but it's just going to drive you crazy. How about instead of driving yourself crazy, you just focus on your preparedness plan, your study plan. Get your materials together, make sure you put enough time in to study, and just show up on test day and do your best. And if you do all that and still get a bad grade, I'll still think you did awesome. Just study, trust your plan, trust your training, let everything else work out. Don't worry about the stuff you can't control. So that's this is a way to use, embrace, and dispose with social situations, academic situations. So, just want you guys to have that flavor. Um, and I'm getting at the point towards the end of the presentation where I recognize that there's a possibility that you guys may have kids um, that really may need like additional, anxiety based support in the school system. Um, last the second recording of the parent series was all about accessing school-based support. So I want to encourage you. I mean, it's free. It's on our website. It's not posted yet. It will be, um, but in short order, it will be ready, and you can look at it. I'll say a little bit about accessing school-based support here, but just know that there's a whole other hour-long presentation on it that you may find useful if you have a student who you're looking to get more school-based support for any of these issues. Okay, but I want to say just a little bit about how you approach um, how to approach uh, the school the school piece, and um, I just in the same way that I talked about in the first parent series, the first recording, if you want to look at that too, I talked about building an alliance with your child, but also a very collaborative problem solving style with your child, where you're working together on coming up with a solution. If you're going to engage with your school about getting more services for your child, I want you to keep that collaborative approach in mind. Don't come in there with your pistols blazing, blaming other people. And just say, I wonder if you could help me get some more support for my child at your school. I know you guys are working hard, but I think I think he or she may need more. And I wanted to have a conversation about that. Okay. All right. So for some of the more severe school anxious kids, and you may have one. I want to talk about this for a second. I've worked with a lot of families who deal with school avoidant children, and school avoidance makes me unbelievably uncomfortable for reasons that I'm going to describe right now. Okay. As a psychologist, I mean, this is the only thing I'm supposed to be, I'm an expert in. So, you know, it's not like I can't tell you how to fix your car or your leaky roof. Um, but I do know this. Okay. I know, and I say it to my clients all the time, that if I wanted to make you depressed, which I would never do, that's mean, is I would prescribe isolation and inactivity. Don't do anything meaningful and don't really connect with anyone. Don't even talk to anyone. And do that for like 2 or 3 weeks and you'll be good and depressed. And with regard to anxiety, I would say whatever you do, if I wanted to make you really anxious again, which I would never do, um, I would say whatever you do for the next 2 or 3 weeks, don't do anything at all that you're not 100% comfortable doing. Even 95%, don't do it because that's still that 5% a little stressful, a little iffy. So don't only do the things you're 100% comfortable doing. Okay. And by 2 or 3 weeks later, I mean, that student will be highly anxious, probably won't even want to leave the house. Um, my plan, that's a silly way to make that point, but isolation, inactivity, and avoidance are the worst things you can do for depression and anxiety. Those two things always underlie school avoidance and difficulty with school and school anxiety. So, um, school refusal checks all three of those boxes: isolation, inactivity, and avoidance. So when I see that happen, I do everything I can to just remove those coping strategies. I say this to you as parents because I want you to know that if you're dealing with a student who's a school avoider, the worst thing that can happen is for the school avoidance to continue for any deal longer, because I'm telling you it will exacerbate the very depression anxiety symptoms that are causing the school avoidance. So just, I don't want to freak you guys out, but I'm just saying that has to be a starter. That has to be the conversation starter is school avoidance is not an option. And then and then it becomes that collaborative problem solving model with the school, about approach with the school about, okay, what different types of sports might make it easier for my child to be comfortable in school, what other sports can be delivered in school to help them through the hard times, those kind of things. But I just want to double down on that. Um, there are times where I've had parents rationalize, well, I just let them take a couple of days off because I knew they'd be really stressed, and I knew it would be a big fight if I forced them to go. Like, I understand all those things, but in the long term, everything's being made worse by that. Healthy strategies are always harder for kids, but they need to be expected, practiced, supported, and reinforced. There's something that there's some terms I want to leave you with, also from in the dialectical behavioral therapy world. It's about an emotional mind, a rational mind, and a wise mind. So, and we all have these. Okay, so the emotional mind is exactly what it sounds. This is that midbrain activation that I was talking about. Your rational mind is one that's really locked in on your frontal cortex, and you just, very theory, and no, you technically you can't do this and you can't do that because it's against the rules. And the emotion mind saying, but I really am scared of of, of not doing that. um and what your wise mind is, and that's where you kind of want to teach your kids to be, and where you want to model for your kids to be. That wise mind is you're acknowledging the emotional pieces of this for yourself and your child, and you're validating them. You're validating those feelings for yourself and your child, and you're also using your rational mind to um, get another perspective on what should happen, or consequences of things not happening. And the wise mind, when it's done well, it's a healthy integration of both the emotional processing and sort of the rational pieces. And so that leads to a good problem solving solution that isn't invalidating, and also doesn't set somebody up for failure or make things any worse. So I always encourage adults to model for their children. Don't make important decisions outside of your wise mind. Okay, if you're too rational or too emotional, you could you could be vulnerable to making a poorer decision because you haven't integrated all the important factors in your decision. So, all right, what else do we have? Real quick, the chronic school anxiety, school avoidance. I told you how I don't want this, and this is just going to make things worse. I talked about isolation, inactivity, and avoidance. Um, I talked about reaching out to the school and engaging in a collaborative process to access school supports. I told you you can look at the second recording in this series, and there's a long version of that. I also want the messaging that I want a child to get from their parents. A kid who is chronically school avoidant is, there is no gap between chronic school refusal and like a partial hospitalization program. The messaging to the child is, if you're too compromised from a social emotional perspective to make it to school over all this time, then your father and I, your mother and I have to look into a higher level of care, like a partial hospitalization program. And that's not like a threat. Some of these programs can be really helpful, but the messaging needs to be, there's no gap. There's no gap of like, if you're too compromised to make it to school, then then that's the level at which that you need to go to another program like a PHP or even inpatient if it's even more severe. So this is just something that I want I want you guys to structure this, that I don't want you guys to let the school refusal pattern linger for too long, because it just gets worse and worse and worse. I know that the energy is, we want to try these things. Okay, try things, but if you're not seeing an uptick, if you're not seeing positive trending, then we need to have the real conversation about, is there a higher level of care that needs to be had. All right. Um, all right. So like I said, if you're at the point with your child where you want to engage in getting more services for them at school, check out the second video. Look at the supports they have at the school, how to access them, be a team player. Use that collaborative problem solving model. This is just sort of a review slide. We want your child to be as active as they can and coming up with ways to make them feel less anxious at school. What supports would be helpful? Okay, and then finding creative ways to reinforce school attendance at home. Um, in the first in the first recording of this series, I talked about a contingency management um, tool. So if you didn't see that one, if you check that series out, there's a way, and I talk about rewards and punishments, and a way to put a system in place around school attendance um, that could be helpful. So check that out. And again, yes, contingency management. This is what I just said. Um, there's a very specific tool that I talk about in the first series. If you wanna do that, and these are points where I've already gone over. I've bounced around a little bit, so thank you guys for tolerating that. I was trying to get all this in. All right, I'm going to end with this. I want you to have my work email, because if you're looking at the time, I didn't leave a lot of time for Q&A because the content's too much and I have to go catch a train. But please copy down my work email if you have specific questions about your child, or any follow-up questions to any series, any recording in the series. I'm very open and to hearing your questions, comments, and I promise I will respond thoughtfully.